So if you have your Bibles with you, I am reading from Luke chapter 22, and I'll be reading verses 35 through 38. Bless you. Then Jesus asked them, "When I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything?" "Nothing," they answered. He said to them, "But now if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. It is written, 'And he was numbered with the transgressors.' And I tell you that this must be fulfilled in me. Yes, what is written about me is reaching its fulfillment." The disciples said, "See, Lord, here are 2 swords." And he replied, "That's enough." Our gospel lesson from Luke doesn't immediately seem relevant to our latest sermon series. But as the layers around it are uncovered, it most certainly is evident that Jesus' message speaks clearly to us this morning. So let's back up to when Jesus first asked the disciples to travel lightly. And this will be in Luke 10. Jesus said, "Go, I'm sending you out like lambs and among wolves. Do not take a purse or a bag or sandals, and do not greet anyone on the road. When you enter a house, first say, 'Peace to this house.' If someone who promotes peace is there, your peace will rest on them. If not, it will return to you. Stay there, eating and drinking, whatever they give you, for the worker deserves his wages. Do not move around from house to house." In Luke 10 here, Jesus had sent out the 70 messengers to go into each and every city and place where Jesus was planning to go to prepare the way for him. The 70 messengers are in addition to the 12 disciples, who I'm assuming had stayed with Jesus. There was an urgency to the missionary task. They were to put aside the usual extra items with which one would travel. Every time-consuming greeting along the way was to be bypassed, not to be rude, but as moving forward with a sense of urgency. The only greeting they were allowed to say centered around peace, which was along the traditional Hebrew greeting, and that word was also a synonym for the blessing of salvation. Which leads us to the question that Jesus asked right after he told Peter to deny him 3 times. He said to them, "When I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything?" They replied, "No, nothing." The disciples trusted Jesus and listened to the command to travel lightly. Jesus demonstrated his truth, which allowed the disciples to trust him when he told them they only needed 2 swords as they continued on the journey toward the arrest of Jesus. He assured them, "It's enough." So like the disciples, we too need to consider what we pack when we travel. For example, here, I did a little bit of research because it's been a little while. My girl's 10 years old. But here, for example, is a baby traveling packing list, right? There's about 10 items for what pack in the suitcase, toiletry essentials, the feeding, the list goes on, other items, diaper bag. Wow. I'm sure a lot of you guys can remember, and you're still going through that. The car is packed full of baby stuff for a weekend trip, right? But as children get older, like my daughter is 10, I did a little bit of research on 10-year-old girls and what they might pack for a weekend. So here, the list is much smaller. Shirt, shorts, underwear, undershirt, socks, swim gear, pants. Very, very small list. And our list was even smaller last weekend when we went to our softball tournament for 10U. She needed her softball jersey, shirt and shorts, and swimsuit. Poof, easy packing, right? We all can relate to the number of times we've overpacked, but learned our lesson for the same trip we took another time, but with fewer items. We also can relate to the times we have underpacked and panicked to find a store to figure out what we forgot at home, or perhaps what we forgot to buy to begin with. But Jesus, bless you, Jesus knew exactly what his disciples needed in each and every situation. His disciples trusted him and used his words and lessons as a way to travel. It can be the same thing for us too, if we take time to listen. Jesus knows exactly what each of us needs for every single situation. We have to listen with what he tells us is enough that we need to travel with. I can relate to the disciples in trusting Jesus' words as I traveled on my faith journey. I would like to share some of my trials and tribulations of my own faith journey to illustrate how I have used his words to guide me. It took me way too long for me to gain God's trust after a huge turning point of my faith. So when Reverend Tom and I sat down to discuss what I'd talk with you guys about today, he told me to speak what was on my heart. And it was simple. As a sermon series about traveling light and dropping the weight has been unfolding week after week, my heart and mind kept traveling to the baggage I finally let go of after way too many years. After I was finally able to let go of the excessive baggage, I relied on what God gave me during the challenging times. I was able to take some essential items with me as I traveled my journey, which allowed me to be the stronger person, more open to God. So let's first start with the definition of journey. Journey is simply a metaphor for the experience of living life with all its ups and downs. Journey used to mean to travel somewhere, but it no longer has that same meaning. In order to fully understand the major shift in my faith journey, it's important to describe how my faith was created. In 1896, my great-great-grandfather Frank began our family farm. At the same time, his family became members of the Presbyterian Church in Hopkins. From there, my great-grandfather, Earl, Frank's son, became the first member to be on the church board. That led my family becoming even more involved in the church. And in fact, my great-grandmother's name is still engraved on the collection plates that we still use in that church today. My grandfather, Clyde, the son of Earl, also was heavily involved in the church, which led to my father's involvement in the church. And then I would later become the fourth generation to serve on the church board at the Presbyterian Church there. So, not only has our farm been the family for over 100 years, so has our Presbyterian roots. Growing up, we lived by the verse, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." That's from Joshua 24:15. We had some home interior plaques. Home interiors was really popular a long time ago. We had like 4 to 5 plaques all throughout our house, like almost in every room we had this verse. It was just a prominent verse that our family lived by. I began Sunday school at the age of 3, which was unheard of, but I was a very well-behaved kid. Trust me, I was. Okay. So I was the only one then to receive the 15-year award for Sunday school. Huge accomplishment. I had some great Sunday school teachers along the way. Some of you might have met her last week. Carol Bites was here. Jan Lamont's been influential in my life. Max and Larry, Cheryl, they were all major influences in my Sunday school upbringing. And then in 1997, Reverend Tom came along. So I was a junior in high school, and he really ignited my faith. I don't know if you guys remember the hymn or not, but Pass It On, it only takes a spark to get a fire going. That's exactly what Reverend Tom did in my life. I don't want to put Reverend Tom on a pedestal because that is silly, but he's been a really strong person in my life who's been influential in my life for 24 years. And which brings me here to you guys today, because I wouldn't have been here if it weren't for Reverend Tom. So from there, with the spark going, excuse me, Reverend Tom sent me on mission trips. I went to Washington, D.C., had some great experiences there in some soup kitchens, and then I went to Youth Quake at Camp Wyoming, which we just started. And so Youth Quake was a weekend retreat with high schoolers doing worship music and Christian worship together with just a bunch of teenagers. It was awesome. Well, then came time for college. And my grandpa was always present in my life through all my transitions in life. So going from 3rd grade getting S's and S minuses to 4th grade getting like A's and B's, I was scared. So grandpa helped me through that transition. And then going from elementary to middle school, I was scared. Grandpa was there. And then going into high school, I was scared. Grandpa was there. So then now it was time for college. So knowing Grandpa was through all my transitions, I asked Grandpa where I'm going to college. He said, University of Dubuque. I said, okay, where else? He's like, University of Dubuque. I'm like, all right, that's where we're going to school. And so a lot of it was because we have family history there. Aitchison Hall is named after a relative of his. And then I realized the real motive is, well, it's a Presbyterian college, which are Presbyterian roots, but the real thing is he wanted me to come home every Sunday to worship in church with him. So that was Grandpa's ulterior motive, but it was all right, because Grandpa said so. So from there, I received a Presbyterian scholarship, and then my freshman year at college, Reverend Tom was also there going to seminary. I was involved in campus ministry. I went to chapel 2 days a week. So on Tuesday was the undergrad chapel, Thursday was seminary chapel. I go to chapel with Reverend Tom, we'd have breakfast, life was great. And then the Emmaus band would come over on Thursday nights, and we'd have Lighthouse, and then I'd go home for the weekends, and I'd go to church. So basically, I was attending 4 worship services every single week. I was having the best Christian life ever. Like, God and I were getting so close. Life was absolutely just pretty much perfect with God and I. I felt so good. And then I received my first calling. I'm like, no thanks, God. I told Reverend Tom. Tom's like, yeah, let's go to seminary together. Yeah, Tom, seminary is not my gig. Done, right? So then, sophomore year continued, right? Everything was going great again. Attending worship services 4 days a week. Life is awesome. Grandpa's happy. Life is great. Well, then November of 2000 happened. I was a football cheerleader, and our cheerleading coach was very particular. In bed at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, that's it. All right. So I was in bed, sleeping, in my pajamas, being the good girl that I am. I told you guys I was so I was a good kid. I was in bed at 8 o'clock, in my PJs. There's a knock on the door. A so-called friend said to me, hey, I want to go to this party at the guy's dorm. Will you come with me? No. We have a game in the morning. We're going to be in trouble. I never was grounded, never had a detention. Like, I lived by the book. I was a good kid. Didn't want to risk my college scholarships, campus ministry. I wanted to be a teacher. I had way too many things going. I'm not going to this party. She's like, come on. I don't want to walk by myself. Fine. So I walked her over to the guys' dorms. And there's some partying going on and stuff, and it wasn't feeling right. I'm like, this is just not my gig. Like, I'm in my PJs, right? And I'm like, no. Everybody's drinking and having this grand old time. I'm gone. And so this guy said, hey, I'll walk you back to the dorms. Because there's a floor of guys on the top floor. I'm like, oh, sure, that's nice of you. His intentions weren't so nice. And I'll leave it at that, because you can use your imagination. We have little people here. But his intentions led to a pregnancy. So I didn't know what to do. I was mad at God. I'm like, really, God? I am living the best Christian life I've ever lived. I'm worshiping you 4 days a week. I'm listening to my grandpa. I'm listening to my parents. I'm going to all my classes. Like always, I'm doing what you want me to do, God. I'm a great person. What is your problem? Like, I was angry at God. There was resentment. I didn't understand. I'm like, so is this your revenge? I'm not going to seminary, so this is what you do to me? Like, what the heck? I was not a very nice person towards God. So I quit going to campus ministry, which then I lost my scholarship, quit going to chapel 2 days a week, and by this time Reverend Tom had graduated, so he wasn't there. I quit everything that had to do with God, all my friends, except I still went home every Sunday to go to church with Grandpa because that's what I needed to do. Did I tell anybody what happened to me? I told that friend. She told me I deserved it. Okay. So I hid it like nothing had happened, right? Just going along, going in my life. Things are going okay, I guess. God is a jerk in my eyes. Didn't want to talk about him. Well, then in January, my grandma died. Awesome, God. Thanks. Something else. Well, then, we're in April, and we're having Easter dinner, and Grandpa's there, with the rest of my family. We're having this cool, calm and collected, Easter meal. And my mom was just kind of joking with me. And she goes, I've heard of the freshman 15, but what about the sophomore 50? Joking. And I said, well, look, Mom, I was beeping R word, okay? I'm like, crap. I just swore in front of my grandpa. You don't do that. I put my head down. I'm like, I cannot believe I just did that. I felt so ashamed of how I told my family what happened to me and the fact that I let my grandpa down. But I looked up, and I saw love in my family's eyes as I looked around the table. My mom's like, okay, we're gonna get through this. So at this point, I'm 6 months along. No prenatal care. So we went and got some care, and the doctor's like, we got some medical issues going on. There's some precancers and cancerous tissue. So after the birth, you'll have to have some surgeries. Cool, God, thanks. So my mom, being a Catholic, she knew of the Catholic charities. And so I don't want to put them down. Maybe it was just my experience, so I don't want anyone to say that I'm running this place down. But we went to the Catholic Archdiocese. And so I was talking to a counselor there, and trying to work with, going through the adoption process. And she tried to convince me I made the entire thing up. That because I was such a good child and such a good Christian and whatever else, I made up the entire situation so I wouldn't let down my family. Cool, God. You sent me to this place that was supposed to help me, this Catholic place. Again, angry at God. And so I left there. My mom called Reverend Tom. She's like, I know you're not serving us anymore, but we need help. Our girl needs help. So Reverend Tom recommended Bethany Christian Services in Orange City, and it was such a phenomenal blessing. They said, I can pick out whoever I want for my child's parents. And so because of my Sunday school faith that I had, that little bit of faith that I had left, that was in the back of my mind, because I had that, I knew I couldn't give her anything but a Christian faith-based home. If I could give her anything, that's all I could give her. That's all I had left. And so her parents are both ministers. They couldn't have any children of their own. They adopted their first daughter when she was 3, but they got Lacey right out of the hospital. But I was still angry, but that's all I could do. And then after Lacey was born, I was really angry with my mom. They had hauled me off to a different floor so I couldn't hear kids or anything because I love babies. And I didn't want to look at her and fall in love with her and keep her and not give her a life that she deserved because I was so angry I wouldn't be able to give her a good life. So I was on a different floor, but my mom was with Lacey for 2 whole days. Like, Mom, knock it off. Like, I'm your only kid. I'm your baby. That baby's not yours. I'm here abandoned in the hospital. I was mad. So, yeah. So then after Lacey, I had 6 surgeries. And then the doctors are like, yeah, the chance of you ever having kids is probably not going to happen. Cool. So I love kids, and the only chance I had for a child is now gone. I'm not going to be able to have children. So that made my faith even harder to hang on to. And so we are going to move to 5 years later. November 2006, my mom died. Okay, sure. And after Lacey was born, we never talked about it. It didn't happen, nothing, right? Especially my father, he would never say her name because he was hurt so bad that somebody hurt his little girl and he couldn't do anything about it. So while we are at that funeral home, the funeral director is going through family members, right? Because you have family members in the list in the obituary. So my father had 2 kids from his previous marriage. And so my sister had 2 kids. Yep, 2 step-grandchildren. Yep, okay, awesome. List them down. My husband had 2 kids. Okay, so 2 step-grandchildren. We weren't engaged or anything at that time. We were just dating, but okay. So step-grandchildren. Are there any grandchildren to list? So my sister and I, the only 2 children of my mom, looked at each other we're like, we did not give mom any grandkids. And it hurt that we did not give mom any grandkids. But I can still see him lean forward. So my dad leaned forward and he said, "What about Lacey Ann?" It's the first time he ever spoke her name. Oh, I just get goosebumps. And so, as crazy as it seems, I realized I went through that situation, through that pregnancy, through all that anger for my mom. Because I told you for those 2 days she held that baby, that's the only grandchild that she ever held. And so I realized that I went through that for my mom. So here, life's trials are not easy, but in God's will, each has a purpose. Often He uses them to enlarge you. And I learned that God does have a plan for me. Yeah, it was tough, but what God did in my freshman year of college, in the first couple months of my sophomore year, I'm living the best Christian life that I've ever had. That set me up to be able to process what God did for me. So this isn't a story about, oh man, you've had a rough life. Yeah, I have, but that's not what this is about. What this is about is how mighty God is. God was able to take these big monumental things in my life and do great things, do phenomenal things. And that's what I'm trying to tell you today, is God is so mighty. Through everything, God is so mighty. Well, then in 2009, miracle baby Jackson comes along in November. So the attack happened in November, my mom died in November, and then Jackson was born in November. November was a really hard, cold month for me. My miracle baby came along and changed all that for me. And so, sorry, I know I'm going off on some tangent. And because my faith was so strong, my dad was baptized on Easter, I was baptized on Easter, so I had Jackson baptized on Easter, and my faith was so unbelievably strong. And then in 2012, my dad died. But I was okay. I really was okay losing my dad, even though I've lost so much. I was okay that I lost my dad because I was leaning on God for my own understanding, right? But He did this for me, and He made my path straight, right? So all those years of being angry, 6 years of being angry at God, led me to this point where I'm like, okay, my dad's with mom. I have this good faith. I'm good. I'm solid. So it kind of reminded me of like a parent waiting, it's after midnight, parent sitting on the front porch, looking at the clock, past curfew. He's like, yep, 2001, not back yet, 2002, and finally, 2006, it's about time, now where have you been? What's your story, right? That's what I kind of felt God was doing. And He was there the entire time, just rocking in His chair, waiting on me. He didn't dare leave my side one bit. And I know I told Alec this the other night, and his eyeballs got huge. Like, what? What are you talking about? But a very positive time in my life. God is almighty once again. I told you guys I felt too broken to become a pastor, right? Well, I was at this women's event on March 31st, 2019, a couple years ago, and the song Waymaker came on. And so even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. Like, oh my gosh. And that's when I got my second calling. And that's when God hit me and said, look, kid, look what I've been doing to you this entire time. I'm mighty. I'm good. I got some good stuff going. And because of what I did to you, now you're going to listen to me for once. It took me 20 years to answer His call, but this is where I am because of how powerful and how mighty God is. And people will say to me, why are you so strong? You've been through so many things in your life. It's because of those essential things that I held on to in my life. It's the scriptures that I held on to. It's the songs that I held on to. It's the people that I held on to. Those are the essential things that I keep thinking about as Reverend Tom is talking about unloading our baggage. Those are the things that have helped me get through this entire process. So I would like to challenge you today. I would like to challenge you to think about what are those essential things that you need in your life? What are those essential things that will help you travel lighter? What scriptures, songs, people, what is the key to helping you move forward and not looking back? What key essentials will help you to unlock the doors to the endless possibilities with God? You know, to put it bluntly, I know there's little ears. I've been to hell and back, right? But what's kept me away from those flames are the songs, the scriptures, the people, that Sunday school faith-based that I talked about. That is what kept me going. Those are the key essential things that have gotten me to where I am today. God is mighty. He's powerful. He's always there. And I hope it doesn't take you 6 years, to ignore him, to be angry, to realize that. But God is there. And he's not going to leave you. Trust me, I tried. It does not work. I didn't want to try. I'm ashamed to admit I tried. It's not going to work. So, are you living a key to help guide others too? Maybe your smile, maybe what you have to say to somebody else is that key that's going to help them move forward. So I urge you to pray. Ask God to help you find your essentials. I don't know what your essentials are. Only you and God know what your essentials are. So what are you putting in your back pockets that will help carry you? Is it Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous? Is it Proverbs 32:1, she is strong and clothed with dignity and laughs with fear of the future? Or maybe it's Waymaker, like it was for me. In all great times, Waymaker always keeps coming back to me. Or maybe you're just carrying those certain people with you, like I do with my Sunday school teachers that will always be in my life. Reverend Tom will always be in my life for what he did. I don't know what your essentials are, but ask God to help you. Please pray with me. Lord, some of us feel weak. Give us strength for today. Some of us feel proud. Stop us from being complacent. Help us to admit and accept our weaknesses, because when we do that, we know you make us stronger. Help us to travel lightly, Lord, as we walk into each and every day. Lead us to put aside anything that holds us back, that distracts us from living out your love in our best days. Help us as we travel as a family of believers. Give us the courage to leave old habits and responses behind, to throw open the doors and break down the walls of the church, and make ourselves freely available as your living presence in the community. Help us to listen to you as you help us figure out what is essential, what is enough for us to travel with on our journey to help you and be with you. Help us, Lord, to always put your love first and to know that your love never fails us. Allow us to go out lightly into the new day, seeing everything as if anew, and responding with the cleansed hearts you have given us. We ask this in the name of the Lord who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.